I don't know why I was shocked, but I was, to see Trump go after Fauci. And it is a similar pattern. Fox News primetime anchors warm up the water for him, and then he dives right in. Any fallout today on that attack against Fauci's testimony before Congress yesterday?
Well, look, I think you're right. Dr. Fauci has credibility with the public that the president doesn't. All the polls show that many, many more Americans trust what Dr. Fauci is telling them than trust what the president is telling them. And I think that for one thing, it irritates the president. And for another thing, Dr. Fauci is the one sort of standing in the way of the approach that the president would like to take, which is a speedy and wholesale reopening of the country as fast as possible. Now, the president has to make decisions based on not just what one set of advisors tell him. What President Trump's aides would tell you is he has to look at the big picture. The whole picture is not up to Dr. Fauci to look at the economy, or the impact on jobs, on the unemployed, on poverty, on businesses. But the president has to take all of these things into account, which is probably true of any president. But Dr. Fauci at this point has a credibility again that nobody else has. And if people out there don't believe that the virus is under control, then the economy will have a hard time reopening to begin with. People won't want to go to work. They won't want to go to schools. They won't want to go shopping. Won't go to restaurants. And so it's critically important, I think, for any president in this situation to earn the trust of the people so they can feel confident the decisions he's making are based on their best interests.
Ron Klain, I'm guessing you're not, you're skeptical that he's making decisions based on people's best interests, but Peter Baker's right. People are not going to go back regardless of what the president says if they think there's danger to their lives or their families' lives to do so. That's not a good economic plan or a prudent family wellness plan. Where do you think things are right now with this testimony today from Dr. Bright, who my colleague Garrett Haake described perfectly? He's a government technocrat. I worked in government. You worked in government. He's someone who's, to the degree that he is partisan, he's a scientist. His party is the data. His loyalty is to the evidence. And his frustration is that we didn't use the evidence or the data to educate the public about the coming pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, the economy is closed today, not because of Tony Fauci, but because of Donald Trump's incompetence and laziness. I mean, Tony Fauci stood up over a month ago in the White House briefing room and said, here's the roadmap to reopening the economy. And that was get the number of cases down, get the testing in place, get people wearing masks. And Trump's done none of those things. So if we're not reopening, it's not because of anything Tony Fauci said, it's because of Donald Trump's failure to act on that advice. Instead, to believe he continued to kind of deny and tweet away this problem. This is on him. Now, Rick Bright, I worked with Rick Bright on the Ebola response. He's a consummate professional. And I think that what you're seeing here in his testimony is just another example of how warnings were made and warnings were ignored. I mean, we're in this mess because the warnings were given and the actions weren't taken. That's backwards looking, Nicole. The problem is right now they're still not being fixed, and these problems continue, and that's why we're in this loggerheads between the president and Dr. Fauci.
Dr. Wen, and you have written recently in an op-ed that you think we're in a different phase of this as a public, that we've missed a lot of the opportunities for containment. Talk about where we are as a country.
Well, back to what Ron was just saying, we actually know what it takes in order to reopen safely. The White House outlined their own criteria and their own guidelines for doing so. If we know what it takes and then we're knowingly ignoring these guidelines, then we're in essence saying that we're giving up on containment, that we had a chance to contain this virus and save lives, but we're not going to do it. And that's, I mean, I find it hard to say because I can't quite believe that our government is doing this. But if we are, then at least be honest about it. At least admit that we are giving up on the strategy that we all thought was the case, that we're going to contain the infection, we're going to test and trace and isolate our way out of this. But if that's no longer the plan, let's be honest about it. And let's move on to what we know in public health to be harm reduction. If there's a behavior that's risky and we're deciding to do it anyway, then the best that we can do is to reduce the harm, because that's our last and best chance to reduce the level of infections and save lives. I can't believe we're here But since we are, let's take those necessary steps and figure out what are the things we can do to reduce risk to employees, to students, to everyone, so that we can at least try to protect those around us.
Dr. Nguyen, you have to tell us what those things are, because you look at these pictures of people flooding into the bars in Wisconsin after that state Supreme Court overruled or outlawed the stay-at-home orders. I mean, what are those things? He described his state as the wild, wild west. What are the things that reduce harm?
Well, I worry when I see these pictures. I see in these pictures potential patients who might come into my ER and their family members who they're going to be infecting. And, you know, this is actually why we rely on the CDC for these guidelines that are not yet being issued. But we rely on these guidelines to say, look, we don't think this is a good idea for restaurants and bars to be open. But if they're going to be open, are there some things that we can do? Are there things like checking the ventilation system? Are there new standards, for example, for putting up plexiglass shields, for everyone to wear masks as much as possible, spacing things out 6 feet apart, museums, if they're going to open, start with opening outdoor spaces and then indoor spaces. If day camps and schools are going to be open, even if it's not the right thing to do, how can we keep it as safe as we can?
Ron Klain, there's a little war of words going on about what the meaning of a playbook is, and you tweeted this. I've had people tweet at me in the last 24 hours. Did the pandemic playbook really exist? Was it really a clearly marked playbook? Would it have helped? Here's the cover and the table of contents. You decide. Please explain.
Yeah, so the other day, Senator McConnell said that the Obama administration had not left a game plan for the Trump administration for dealing with something like that. And in fact, we had left a playbook, and it was easy to tell that's what it was because it said on the front in big red letters, playbook. And then it had all those steps you needed to take, the 69 pages of steps of what to do when the threat of a pandemic loomed. Now, what's interesting is, Nicole, that first, everyone said no such document existed. Now, today, the White House press secretary came out and said, well, there was this document, but it wasn't really that good, and we had our own document, and so on and so forth, which contradicts the fact that Trump's position until now has been, well, no one saw this coming. Now her position is, well, we saw it coming. We rejected the Obama playbook. We had our own playbook. Our playbook was better. So, I mean, the only thing that's consistent is the excuse making from the White House. They've been fighting a war on facts. They're now fighting a war on Fauci. They need to fight a war on the disease. And we left them the playbook to do that. They ignored the playbook. And instead, we've had the disaster that we've seen.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.